Hi, everybody. I wanted to check in today and do a quick book chat on the latest book that I finished. It is called Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. Let me pull up the um, cover here, which is probably going to be kind of glary because I'm in a different room. The cover's not that great anyway. Actually, on the little icon, for the this is an electronic book. There's a different cover, but this is actually, I guess, the original cover from whenever this was published. This particular book was originally published like in 1927. I read the English translation. This is a German, was originally written in German. I read the English translation that was done. That was a retranslation of the original English translation that was done. The one I read was done in 1963, and the edition I read it also had a preface by Hermann Hesse dated 1961, and I believe he died the following year in 1962. So, what is this book about? So, this book is basically about this man, Harry Haller, who thinks he is half wolf from the steppes of like Russia. He thinks he's half human and half wolf, and he is a middle-aged man. He sort of has an existential crisis and reaches a sort of level of despair where eventually then he meets a couple of androgynous characters who take him on a sort of a journey of self-awareness, where he eventually also meets the spirit of Mozart and has a complete change in consciousness. So it's a meaning of life type book, I think. It concerns several main themes, in my opinion. So one of them is duality, because the character of the Steppenwolf means wolf of the steppes, I think. She struggles with this duality of his existence, where one side of him is this free-spirited, instinctive, pleasure-seeking being, which would be the Steppenwolf side of him, and then the human side of him is intellectual, struggles for the refined, sort of the ideals of humanity, and so those two are at odds, and that has sort of through his life dominated his life, and over the course of his life, then he has become so disillusioned by people. He has over time isolated himself to the point where at this point in his middle age he really is a very lonely person, because he feels like he doesn't have any connection to the world or to other people, because when he's this free-spirited person, the free-spirited people like him, but then when they discover he has this other side, which is more of this intellectual, idealistic, human side, then the free-spirited people, they don't connect to him anymore, and so they sort of, he winds up not being able to connect with them. And then likewise, so on the intellectual side, he early on in his life, could connect with these types of people, but then whenever they learned he had this free-spirited, sort of instinct-driven, pleasure-seeking side as well, they became disillusioned with him, and so he didn't feel like he was connected to them. So by the time he had reached middle age, he felt like he was pretty much doomed forever to live a life of loneliness and really meaninglessness. Yeah, and so this actually reminded me of the book Stoner, which I just did a video on and just finished not that long ago, because this character Stoner sort of found himself in middle age, disconnected, I think, from most of the world as well, in his case due to lack of love. The character Stoner in that book was really attached to the middle class, and found that he could not easily break free of those obligations that he had in his middle class sort of life, whereas Steppenwolf actually has a love-hate relationship with the middle class, and talks about this at length in the book, where the middle class is seen sort of as this stable people who are middle class. don't search because they are always looking for a stability. So they don't go to either or extreme. So they're not, in his view, they're not dualistic because they don't have this conflict between their natures. And so he sort of he abhors them on the one hand, but then on the other hand, he actually is drawn to them, and actually usually takes rooms and rents rooms from people in middle class houses, just to, I guess, for the sense of stability. And so, but I think that the middle class metaphor there that he describes in this book, that is described in this book, also goes for societies as a whole, because he feels like societies as a whole sort of exhibit the same. They struggle for a balance, and then it's only the people on either end that are pushing the society to change. Either in either one direction, and it's that tension that causes the change, and then the society rebuilds itself around that balance, and then again there's a change in the future. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well. So that idea of dualism. So like I said, it pervades really the entire book until he ultimately meets this character Hermione, who is a woman. She's sort of an androgynous figure because she reminds him of his best friend from youth, named Hermann, and actually he just calls her Hermione as a female Hermann, but we don't never know her actual name. And so she ends up taking him on a journey of self-awareness, and teaches him to dance and various other things. But through these sort of mundane things of going to parties, finding a girl, not Hermione, and having a sexual relationship with her, a really fulfilling sexual relationship with her, and these other sorts of grounded worldly things, Hermione starts to show him a new reality, and then eventually introduces him to another character named Pablo, who is a musician who is also an androgynous sort of character in the book, I think, and teaches him different things about music, because Harry, the human part of the Steppenwolf, doesn't like current music like jazz and this type of thing, and he finds it abhorrent. His human half finds it abhorrent, and then one of his other muses that he eventually meets is actually the spirit of Mozart, and he calls these sort of people, humans who have met a pinnacle of success or have touched some truth of existence, become immortal. And in his sense, Mozart is one of these immortals. And through the course of the book, in this journey that he ends up going on with Pablo, Hermione, and the spirit of Mozart, the immortals, he reaches ultimately a new sense of awareness, like I mentioned. So what ends up at sort of eventually happening is the characters, Harry, the Steppenwolf, goes to a masked ball, and there, I think the masked ball sort of serves as a metaphor for life, and he discovers there's multiple realities to himself and to the world, and he gets introduced to this idea of life as a game, where you have multiple selves, you have multiple parts of yourself, just hundreds, in his view, hundreds of aspects of himself. And the life part of it is this game where these different aspects of yourself are rearranged as board pieces, and with a different outcome with each arrangement of the board pieces and the different arrangements of all of our aspects of our multiple selves. So that was really cool. So through this sort of journey that he goes on, he really does, his consciousness is expanded. He is given sort of the key to life. I don't think I'll give that away, even though this really, this is a meaning of life book, so it's not really a book that's spoiler driven. But on the other hand, I don't really want to just give away kind of everything about the book, because I feel like it's a book that's best discovered as each individual, because it would have a different meaning probably to each individual. It would probably have a different meaning to you than it does to me. And actually, in the beginning of the book, there is an introduction by Hermann Hesse, and he mentions this, how it has been his experience reading the book that different people experienced it differently, and he hoped that the reader was just able to take what was meaningful for that individual from the book and apply it to themselves. And so I think that that's true. So I think that that's everyone who read this book would probably get a different interpretation of it. I wanted to mention about the book. I had just been having a conversation a few days ago with a friend of mine who actually lived through the counterculture youth movement of the 1960s in the United States, and she mentioned that this book was very popular and very influential among the youth of the 1960s here in the U.S. as part of that whole counterculture movement. And I can really, really understand why after reading this, because it really had a message that resonates, especially with middle class kids, which I think drove a lot of that. Questioning of middle class values and things that occurred in the counterculture of the 1960s, among many, many other things, but that was part of the movement. And I think that was really interesting to hear her say that, and then go on and read the book and understand, yeah, I can see how that would have been the case. And I'm really curious if there are any German readers out there, if this book has had an impact on German culture, and if it, if so, what has been its impact in German culture? Did it have a counterculture type effect as it did here? I wonder. But before I go, I'm going to leave it at that. I do want to end with a quote from the book, which I just loved. I think this quote is really good, a good reminder for people like me who like to read a lot. The character in the book is reading a newspaper, and I think it's a good quote that sort of illustrates, how we really need to be mindful of what we're reading, because what we're reading, we're actually internalizing. We're actually inviting that author, whoever wrote that, we're actually inviting that, what we read, into our being, because it becomes part of ourselves once we read it. And the quote is this: "For a good 10 minutes I read a newspaper. I allowed the spirit of an irresponsible man who chews and munches another's words in his mouth and gives them out again undigested to enter into me through my eyes." So I thought that was cool because, I think especially, it reminded me actually right now of the election, and to watch or to read or to actually hear the news. You're allowing that into your being, and so you need to be mindful of what you're allowing into your brain, because there can be a lot of mess and a lot of trash that gets in there very easily. So I think I'll leave it at that. I enjoyed the book very much. I will read. I have read one of his previous books, The Glass Bead Game, which I did not enjoy so much. I might give that another chance, but I definitely want to read Siddhartha, which is another book by Hermann Hesse that's on my list to read in the near future. So stay tuned, and there will be more coming. Thanks. Bye.